Okay, welcome to the Art Class Bexley's talk on Van Gogh and the paintings that he made in Arles, the Arles landscapes, which Van Gogh made between 1888, the beginning of 1888 and early 1889. Now, the reason we're looking at just these particular landscape paintings is because, first of all, Van Gogh is such a cultural icon that he's a sort of a global cultural icon whose work crossed many genres of painting: portrait, landscape, still life. But the reason we're going to look at the landscapes in particular is because of the way he responded to a particular environment he was in when he arrived in Arles. And you have to bear in mind that I've just selected about 20 paintings from his period in Arles, which was just over a kind of a year. But the important thing to remember is during that period of almost a year, he made a painting, and I mean an oil painting, every day. So there's several hundred paintings that Van Gogh made whilst he was in Arles, which cross between landscapes, still lives. He made the sunflowers there, portraits, as well as the landscapes. But we're going to look in this lecture about the landscapes. And the first slide we're going to look at is this painting of a blossom tree. This was made in the early spring of 1888. Just to give you some background, Van Gogh was born in Zundert, which is a small town in the Netherlands. He came from, his father was a pastor of the Dutch Reformed Church, and he had a number of siblings. Included is a brother Theo, and Van Gogh initially worked in as a sort of junior art dealer in a firm in The Hague in the Netherlands called Goupil & Co. He was then transferred to the London office of Goupil & Co, and then back to the Paris office of Goupil & Co, the art dealers, where he doesn't seem to have been a very good art dealer. Probably was just a bit too honest on his opinions, because he was sacked from Goupil & Co. His life then took a different turn. He became a lay preacher, returned to London, and this is the London of Charles Dickens, and developed quite a sort of strong social conscience. He then moves to the Borinage, which is the mining district of Belgium, and again tries to be a lay preacher there, but is kind of dismissed by the authorities. And it's only then, when he's in his really late 20s, that he needs to find some purpose in his life. So he decides that he's always had an interest in art. He decides to become an artist. And the family, the Van Gogh family, have by this time disowned Vincent. And the only member of the family with whom Vincent receives any kind of support is his brother Theo, who by now is working for the same company, Goupil & Co, but he's running their Montmartre branch, which is showing, which that branch shows the more advanced paintings, and is beginning to show the work of impressionists like Pissarro, Monet, I think Degas. And so literally Theo is financially supporting Vincent, and it's very interesting to look at the letters that cross between them. Vincent is writing to Theo almost on a daily basis, and Vincent, after spending some periods of time in Antwerp and in Paris, learning the trade of painting, because he was entirely self-taught, decides that he wants to start a colony of artists in the Provençal town of Arles, which is in the Midi, right in the south of France. And he's drawn there because of the light. And apparently the Arlesian women were the most beautiful in France, apparently. So he takes the long train journey from Paris to Arles, which would have probably been over a period of 20 hours or more, the steam train down to Arles. And he arrives in the very early spring. The snow is still on the ground. And this painting here is one of the very first that he makes, and it still shows the early spring blossom. And the thing I just want to say about this painting is Vincent in Paris, he'd been exposed to Impressionism. And at first he dismissed Impressionism, he didn't like it. But during his time in Paris, he began to make acquaintances of Impressionist artists, and he began to actually adopt the style of Impressionism. And in this painting, his first in Arles, he's still using Impressionist painting techniques, which is to say, he's using literally broken strokes, different individual strokes of colour placed against one another, not on top of one another, but against one another, to create this optical mix of colour, which you see in Impressionism. The painting would have been painted on a white ground, and it's the individual strokes you can see in the blossom, in these even in the sky, individual strokes of different types of blue in the sky, the fence, different violets, oranges, ochre colours, and then in the ground, whites, greens, off-whites, lilacs. That's what's happening in his early paintings in Arles. Here's another one made probably roughly about the same time. And again, I think you can see these individual strokes of colour, various different shades of green. And what's happening with Impressionist colour theory is that when you put different colours next to one another, at a certain distance, the eye optically mixes those colours, so they kind of blend together in the optics of your own eye, in the viewer's eye. And the one benefit this has is that it creates a great colour vibrancy and luminosity of colour, especially if the paintings are made on white grounds. And virtually all Impressionist paintings are made on a white ground, because they needed that kind of luminosity, because the light goes through the colour of the painting, hits the white ground of the base of the painting, the ground of the painting, and then is reflected back onto our optic nerve, and that's where our eye does the optical blending of these colours. So just to get back to the story of Van Gogh, his first few weeks I think are spent in lodgings in Arles. But quite soon he managed to rent a house, and it's called the Yellow House. And this is a painting he made of it. It's quite near the railway station, as you can see. This is the Yellow House, where he intended to create the colony of artists in the south. And it's unfortunately no longer exists. It was bombed in the last war and is now basically a car park. But this is what it looked like. In that house, you can see him starting to sort of acquaint himself with Arles. And at first, he starts making paintings of his own space, literally his own environment. So we see this painting he made of his own bedroom in the Yellow House. And the thing to say is, as opposed to the earlier paintings, the painting here, he's moving away from Impressionist colour methods, and he's using colour in a much more emotional way. He's kind of using it in a way that another painter at the time, Paul Gauguin, was using. That's to say, he's using colour both emotionally and synthetically. Now, when I use the term synthetically, what I mean by that is he's putting quite large areas of colour against one another, not broken brushstrokes, but quite large areas of colour. So you get these quite large areas of yellow against the cool blue, and then that cool blue against the lighter lilac blue, and then that lilac blue against the quite large areas of green, and against the the large areas of the yellow on the table and the chair. And so the image is not broken up as much as it is, say, in impressionist painting. In the painting style that he's developing, colour tends to be what is called local colour. In other words, specific objects have their own colour. The chair is yellow, the bedspread is red. And of course, what these colour relationships are doing, they're setting up a symbolism. It's a kind of emotional symbolism in colour, so that we get to feel something of what the artist is feeling about his room. The warmth of the red tiles on the floor, the kind of relationship of the red to the yellow, this warmth, the coziness of the bed against these cooler lilac and blue tones of the walls, the calmness. And Van Gogh often speaks of calmness, which is an odd term for Van Gogh, but he genuinely did associate certain colours with calmness. And so Van Gogh's paintings at this time demonstrate an artist who is on a sort of mental equilibrium. He starts to explore a bit further into Arles, and this is a very, very famous painting, the terrace of the night cafe. And this again is using these kind of atmospheric, emotional, poetic colours, but again, local colour. So the whole area of the awning, the front of the restaurant, it's all illuminated in these warm, there's not just one colour of yellow, there's cooler yellows, there's hotter yellows, it's going towards the orange, there's greeny yellows, there's probably about 5 or 6 different yellows that go up to make this illuminated area of the terrace. And then it comes down to really warm, kind of orangey tones down here. And he's offsetting that against the cool blues. And then that lovely, beautiful starlit sky. So you have to be aware that what he's doing is he's using colour in an emotional and a symbolic way. The warmth of the human presence of the cafe against the starlit night, the coolness of the sky, the coolness of the buildings around, and illuminated by the warmth of the windows. So this is the direction Van Gogh's art is taking in Arles, and but he's also homesick. He's lonely for his home country of Holland, and it so happens that as in Holland on the canals, in Provence, they have the similar bridge system of these cantilever bridges, and it's possibly an explanation for why he chose this subject is literally his homesickness for his home country of the Netherlands. But the thing to say about Van Gogh's painting at this time is, as in the previous painting of the bedroom, there's a great respect and attention for the details, the humble details of the everyday. The way he paints the blades of grass, the colours of the women's aprons, the individual brickwork, you know, the way he's described the cart on the bridge. It's painted with a great deal of love and respect for you know, the individual things in their existence in the world. We see this will come much more apparent if you look at paintings like his sunflowers. The way he will describe really the most detailed aspects of things. He starts to explore a little bit further, and you see him describe in letters to Theo that he's spotted, you know, another subject to paint, and he actually describes somebody's garden. So he's managed to actually gain access to a garden here, and it's not a very good reproduction, but you can see from here the, you know, the painful the pains he's gone to actually describe the individual, you know, the individual presence of individual flowers and their existence in the world. You know, Van Gogh is not creating generalized images, which, for example, if you compare this with a painting like Monet's famous painting, Impressionist Sunrise, is a very atmospheric, generalized impression of a view. No, Van Gogh does something quite different. He's very particular about the way he looks at the world. It's almost a form of prayer, in that he focuses his attention so much on specific details. And this is a, you know, particular garden in Arles. And notice how he's using colour again. He's using colour so that, again, as in the impressionist sense, that it mixes optically in the eye. So different marks of colour, and these are all individual brush marks, are put down. But when you see how these blues interact with the green yellows, the greens interact with the orangey reds, these cooler greens against warmer greens, lilacs to green yellows. He's using complementary colour theory. That's to say, red is the complementary of green, yellow is the complementary of violet, blue is the complementary of orange. But you know, he's also painting the public parks in Arles, and you know, the paintings take on a quite poetic turn. He's incredibly lonely at this time. His only really communication is with Theo, his brother, to whom he writes every day. And in a painting like this, we see a young courting couple in the public park in Arles. Probably it appears maybe late afternoon, early evening. And this, if you look closely, really quite large brush strokes defining these shadow areas, probably laid on with a palette knife. You know, areas like this here with the grass, these different tones of green, cooler greens, warmer greens, the lighter greens being warmer greens, laid on with a palette knife really quite thickly. So the actual surface of his painting is beginning to acquire a much greater physicality. The actual surface of the painting is becoming really quite thick with paint and physical. As spring starts to move into summer, he explores a bit further in the landscape around Arles, and there's a plain. I'll just go. There's a plain, an alluvial plain near Arles. It's called La Croix, and he starts to make drawings of this alluvial plain. It's a vast landscape, and this particular drawing happens to be in the British Museum now. And he's making these drawings, which will go towards the paintings. He does them as kind of studies, basically. And this drawing here is made with a reed pen. That's to say, sort of bamboo reed, which is cut down to a blade, and with Chinese or Indian ink. And look at the variety of marks that he's making that describe that landscape, the way light, the different light effects that he's getting by way of the different marks that he's using. And it's creating this visual richness. The marks get smaller as we go towards the horizon. And so Lacroix actually starts to form a big subject in his work during this sort of late spring, early summer period. And here's one of the paintings that he makes of Lacroix, and it's farmhouses, a field, a peasant working in the field. And again, notice this attention to detail. Each element within the painting has its specific identity. You know, the peasant's top is blue, is delineated against the various yellow greens of the meadow. The lilacs of the wall, lilacs and deep lilacs, lighter blues, some yellows. You know, it has a color identity that's kind of like lilac, but it's made up of different strokes of lilac. Goes up there into pink there, going down into the lilac. So, you know, the green of the gate, the orange of the roofs. He's giving objects in the painting their specific identity, but he's not making it boring. He's using varieties of brush strokes so that it creates this kind of richness, even when you get quite large areas of colour, as in the meadow. It's comprised of different modulations of the colour, you know, warm yellows, cool yellows, greens, as goes with the trees. It's not just greens, it's cool greens, warmer greens, blue greens, sort of reddy, warmer, darker greens. So just bear that in mind, like the horizon, the blue of the Alpes Maritime in the background. So based on that drawing, Van Gogh goes on to make this oil painting of the landscape of Lacroix. And again, look at the precision, look at this kind of fierce looking, you know, he's been very, very specific about his description of this landscape. You know, you can almost pluck individual elements out. And it's at this point fair to say Van Gogh is a graphic painter. I'll explain what I mean by that. If, for example, you look at the paintings of Rembrandt and you look at, say, a Rembrandt self-portrait, Rembrandt uses paint in a very painterly way. You know, Rembrandt is pushing the paint around. He's moving wet paint into wet paint. And that's a sort of very painterly way of painting. Painters like Van Gogh, and this is a good example, painters like Picasso, painters like Matisse, they are very kind of graphic painters. In that's to say, the painting it stems from drawing, and so that there's a great graphic drawing structure to this. So Van Gogh is aligning the drawn line, as in that drawing, and is aligning it with really quite pure colour. And that's one of the great developments of his painting. That's one of the unique features of his painting. He's synthesizing drawing, and he's synthesizing it with colour, and he's using quite large areas of colour, albeit, you know, with these large areas broken up with smaller brush strokes of colour. But this is a big new invention in painting. Another area around Arles that he discovered was the old monastery of Montmayor, and this was painted in the locale of Montmayor, and again a reed pen with ink And look at the beautiful variety of marks. And you know, when you make drawings, you know, your drawings, good drawings, have this vitality and this richness of mark making. You know, the difference between these darker marks here, the smaller pinprick marks, the spiky marks, the rhythms that he's setting up with the way these trees made up of the individual marks, the way they're blowing in the wind. You know, the marks, that the cross hatching that he's using for the more solid forms of the rocks. These are all inventive marks that create almost a sort of tactile sense of what this landscape feels for us. Here's a painting that he made, also of Montmayor, the first genuine Van Gogh, the first genuine major Van Gogh to be discovered since 1928. It came to light in 2011. Someone found it in an attic and they submitted it to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and lo and behold, the Van Gogh Museum declared it a genuine Van Gogh and an important one from his Arles period. Again, notice the kind of the rhythms that he's setting up with these trees, the beautiful rhythms that's giving this painting its structure, and the broken brush marks that are, you know, that basically melt in our eye optically. As the spring turns into summer, a new theme starts to come into Van Gogh's painting, and that's the theme of the sun, and particularly the theme of yellow, the association with yellow, the colour yellow, and the sun. And we see here, Van Gogh was always interested in painting physical labour. He himself described himself as an artist labourer, and he many of his paintings show you know, working people in labour, and so we see here, I think, women actually sort of scrubbing clothes, other people, I think, working in the fields. But this labour, this scene of human labour, is set against this kind of much more sort of universal theme of the you know, the setting of the sun, and this sort of whitey yellow orb is sinking into this sort of these blazing yellows, these cadmium yellows, these lighter lemon yellows. And then he's playing those off against these warmer yellows, and then the warmer yellows go into the hot yellows, and then the hot yellows go into the violets, and then the violets go into the lilacs. The richness of colour is what makes paintings like this and makes them really quite hypnotic to look at. And if we just go down, the theme continues. He visits a small town village on the coast called Sainte Marie. Now I think this is at Sainte Marie. It could be Sainte Marie or Arles, but again, this wonderful painting here where the foreground is 3/4 of the painting, this very extensive foreground. The orb of the yellow sun is setting against almost this silhouetted townscape with their warm terracotta colours, which is offset against the golden, the various hues of gold, yellow, sort of violet reds, warm reds, oranges, terracottas of the wheat field that's in high, you know, it's in the height of summer, but it's offset against this industrial scene here, the smoke coming from the chimneys. In fact, there's even a windmill there. Here's another one, I think in the marshlands around Sainte Marie. But my goodness, this is a small painting. You can really see here the vigour of his brush strokes. In fact, some of these are actually made by a palette knife. He's literally slabbing on paint. It's really very thick here, but it doesn't lose its identity. Objects still have their identity. That, you know, the stunted pollarded trees here, and the rays of the sun is literally described with very thick paint, brushed outwards, and the paintings start to take on not so much a descriptive feature of landscape, but what's beginning to happen is they're beginning to take on they're beginning to take on as a symbolic aspect. And so we see in this image here, his landscapes are moving towards a symbolic quality, and we have here the scene of the Sower. Now this painting Van Gogh made probably in the high summer when he was in Arles. He got the idea from a French painter called Millet, who did a painting called the Sower, and he also did another famous painting called the Gleaners. And Millet was a great painter of the peasants in the fields, and Van Gogh identified with painters like that in France. He wanted to paint honest toil and labour, but what that meant in a more kind of cosmic religious sense. And so you see him here depicting a sower, but the sower isn't just any farm worker. The sower here is actually sowing the seeds of humanity, and it's set against this emblazoned sky, where the life force of the sun is literally giving life to these seeds that are being sown. So this kind of universality makes itself present when, during the period that Van Gogh makes these landscapes in Arles. You've only got to think of the very famous painting Starry Night, which was made during this period. Now, towards the end of the 1888, Van Gogh put the idea to his brother Theo about inviting the painter Paul Gauguin down to, help him start the community of artists. Gauguin, I think, arrives in about September 1888, and they kind of paint together for 3 months, and more or less rub along okay together, having very intense discussions about painting. Vincent is working like a madman at this time, making a painting every day. He's drinking a hell of a lot. He's not really looking after himself. And towards the end of the year, certainly his mental state starts to deteriorate. And just a few days before Christmas, he receives a letter from his brother Theo saying that Theo's going to marry his fiancée, Johanna Van Gogh Bonger. And it's surmised that this really sets Vincent into a real tailspin mentally. And one particular evening, there's an incident where things hadn't been going well with Gauguin, but Vincent follows Gauguin, and apparently, according to Gauguin, and this is according to Gauguin because we have no other record, So Van Gogh reaches this crisis, which is well documented. He mutilates his ear and is treated in hospital, and after a while is admitted to the asylum at Saint-Remy, which is some short distance from Arles, more up in the Alpes-Maritimes. And it's by the standards of its time, the asylum at Saint-Remy, where Van Gogh had admitted himself actually as an inpatient, was fairly enlightened. The chief physician in charge of the asylum allowed Van Gogh to make paintings, go out into the grounds and make oil paintings. and this is one of the real masterpieces of that period. It's called The Reaper, and again, it's a kind of another landscape painting which has great symbolism. Van Gogh, in a letter, actually describes this painting, where he describes the reaper as basically being a symbol of death, and the wheat field as being humanity. And the painting is again given this kind of universality, because all the symbolism is bound within the context of nature. Again, we have the setting sun, the life-giving sun, which has given growth to the wheat, and there's this wonderful restlessness that is appearing in Van Gogh's paintings, and which will be a continuing theme to his art, both here at Saint Remy and for the last period of his life up in Auvergne in the north of France. But this really brings to a close the period of Van Gogh's painting in Arles, and the incredible development that occurred within his art during that period. And the art was to go on to influence, not unfortunately in Van Gogh's lifetime, although he was known amongst the painting community in France, but it went on to far greater recognition within about a decade after his death. His brother Theo died within 6 months of Van Gogh's own death, and up in Auvergne, Theo left all of Van Gogh's paintings to his widow Johanna van Gogh-Bonger, and it was through Johanna's, his sister-in-law's, efforts that the world has come to know Van Gogh, because it was through Johanna that she oversaw the inclusion of Van Gogh's paintings in exhibitions in both the Netherlands, Germany, and France. And his paintings came to the particular of a new generation of artists, in particular the German expressionists working in Germany at the time, in the early 20th century, in the early 1900s, and also to the French school of painting, the new French painters, the likes of Henri Matisse and André Duran. And you can see here this painting of André Duran, which quite clearly shows the kind of the liberation of colour, which Van Gogh was pioneering in his Arlesian landscapes. This again is another painting from Provence that Duran made when he was down there with Matisse. And Van Gogh's influence continues even up to the present day, and in our very own David Hockney, whose work here you can see very great acknowledgement of Van Gogh in David Hockney's graphic paintings, very rich graphic paintings, again drawing on ideas of uniting colour with draftsmanship. So in summary, Van Gogh's paintings in Arles are a breakthrough period for the development of modern painting, and they bear testament to the incredible hard work that Van Gogh does during a period of like 8 to 10 months. And the consequences of Van Gogh's, albeit unacknowledged, work at the time had very profound influence on the painting of modern artists such as Matisse, Duran, the German expressionists, and we indeed are the inheritors of this rich legacy that occurred within such a short space of time. And with that, I'm going to finish this talk on Van Gogh's Arles landscapes. Thank you for listening.